Interface Video presents Fairfield Today. Brought to you by Fairfield Federal Savings and Loan, Fairfield Medical Center, Fairhope Hospice and Palliative Care, the Fairfield County Board of Developmental Disabilities, and the Frankie Smith Funeral Home.
Well, hi and welcome to Fairfield Today. My name is Rick Schneider, community educator with Fairhope Hospice and Palliative Care. We are recording in the beautiful Pickering house, and I have two wonderful guests with me today, two Fairhope's chaplains, if I can use the word chaplain. First of all, on my far left, which would be your right, Kermit Welty. Kermit,
thank you for having us.
it's good to see you. And then second, but not last, is Mark Lynn. Mark?
Hello. Good to be here.
It's, and I guess calling you chaplain, there's a, I don't know if it's a misconception, there's different ways of looking at chaplain. I know in the wars they had a Protestant chaplain, a Jewish chaplain, a Catholic chaplain. Do you folks focus on any spiritual belief out of curiosity, Mark? Do you have...
You mean me personally or as part of my...
Professionally.
No, it's definitely about meeting their needs, meeting them where they're at, whatever their belief system is. That's what we focus on. We don't try to talk them into or out of anything. That's kind of our role, to make sure they're at peace and whatever that is for them. That's what we try to do.
And that current is kind of interesting. We don't try to talk them into or out of anything. I know I've talked to people, pastors, and this is your chance. Grab them. We don't work that way, correct?
That is correct. Yes.
Have you had many different belief systems out of curiosity?
Over the years that I've been a chaplain here, I've worked with 17 different belief systems.
Wow.
From American, Indian, 2 or 3 different branches of that. Many atheists, several agnostics, some universalists, some panelists. Can't even think of the word.
Pentecostal?
No, pantheistic.
Thank
Thank you, Mark. I knew you knew it.
Yeah. Bam of the P.
Yeah, but it's also Jewish patients. Yes, it's so you've got to be prepared to meet them at their level, and the challenge is to do it in a way that you're not insulting. It's very easy to go in and talk to somebody and say to them, "Do you have a church affiliation?" And no, I'm Jewish. It's a synagogue or a temple, and so it's very easy for us to approach it from our Christian perspective.
Yeah. Well, and when you said 17 belief systems, I was thinking Southern Baptist, Episcopal, Presbyterian, and all that. So that's the Christian. But Christian is what, one belief system, I guess? Or?
For me, I don't know how Mark does it. I divide Christian into 4 categories. I've got Protestant, I've got Catholic, I've got Orthodox, and then I've got more contemporary. So I kind of divide it and approach it from that way. I tend to treat all Protestants pretty much the same. And then Catholics, I try to honor their belief system. Orthodox is very close to Catholics, but some significant differences over that. And then some people that have a belief system in Christ, but have said no to organized religion.
Yeah. Mark, he was, when you were saying the different divisions of Christianity, I was thinking, Christmas and Easter only, when convenient only, every week. There seems to be little denominations there.
Yeah, and they do. Denominations have certain belief systems that separate them from others. Obviously, that's why there are denominations. It seems like to me, for the most part, a couple organizations or groups in a church got in an argument, disagreed about something. This one thing became really important to them, and they separated, and there's a new denomination that has this very specific belief. And like Kermit said, you try to be sensitive to those things. And I will say, some of those beliefs can create opportunities or problems, however you want to look at it,
Yeah.
for certain patients. The vast majority of the patients that I know I deal with are some form of Christianity in our culture. The vast majority of them are that. But for me, that makes it kind of easy. Because I suppose if I have a strength, it's in what I believe and what I live and try to live. So
I kind of look at it, the same church, different pew. We're all worshiping, the Christians are worshiping the same.
yeah, having Christ in common is obviously a great place to start.
Oh, yeah. But I guess, does that, we talked about sometimes it can be, the spiritual beliefs can be a hindrance or religious beliefs. I know we've had patients who don't want to go to a doctor or something because they see illness maybe as a sign of punishment or something. And as a patient contact volunteer, I had a woman who was suffering because she didn't want to take medicine. She said, I've done wrong and I'm suffering. So I guess for you folks, I don't know, is there a simple way to address that? I don't know. I don't want to put you on the spot, but you don't, I guess I think that, I think differently than that. Let's put it that way. So I don't know. I know with this patient, I was trying to talk to her and saying, well, maybe if you were to take a little pain medicine, it might help you to pray a little bit. I mean, she was in agony, I didn't know what to say. So I guess it does get interesting when you have to bounce more or less from different belief systems. Atheists, are you allowed to see, or I don't say allowed, do they accept?
It's their choice.
Okay.
Atheists some let us visit, some of them have restrictions. I have a patient that I just got a message on that's an atheist but will accept chaplain visits, but no religious discussion.
Yeah.
And so that's how I will approach it. The bottom line is if I can show them peace, and as Mark mentioned, which is our ultimate goal, their peace with, if they're at peace with their atheistic belief system, then who am I to disturb that? That would be dishonoring and disrespectful to that individual. We have that mindset that we want to convert everybody to our particular belief system, but Christ walked past a lot of people and just allowed them to remain in their belief system, and somehow we've lost that respect for others in our intensity sometimes of trying to make converts.
Well, Mark, it's kind of interesting. We accept people where they are and we kind of walk with them. That way sometimes you can direct them around.
Excellent point. I love that. As you spend time with them, a very easy thing as a chaplain to do, a spiritual care coordinator, whatever you want to call us, is to, if it is an atheist, tell me about how you got there. How did you arrive? That's a great place to start. And it is funny how, as you, and you can't fake it. You can't fake caring for someone, because we all see through that. No one likes to be patronized. But if you genuinely care, and I know Kermit does, Carl does, you genuinely care for someone, it kind of, you build that trust over time, and each patient is different. A lot of times we don't have a lot of time with patients, and it's kind of, to be honest, unfortunate. But as you build trust, they kind of open up to what you think, and so it's every once in a while, someone who may call themselves a Christian but not really understand what Scripture teaches. Those are just awesome, fun, fulfilling opportunities. Where you get to share the gospel. They open that door for you, and that's exciting. But again, like Kermit said, the goal, no matter how passionately we believe what we believe, the goal is to make sure they are at peace. They're not afraid. Those are, and if they're okay, then whether we love it, hate it, whatever, we have to be okay with that. And that's kind of trying to be a professional.
And sometimes that causes us heartaches.
Yeah, it hurts. Yeah. It does at times, but yeah. So
they always say, you can show God's love, and if necessary, use words. Yeah. But you can let people know you're a Christian just through your actions. And I think you folks do, you accept, and it kind of reminds me of, on the crucifixion, there's two bad guys there, and the one guy, more or less in street language, said, let's just get off here and go have a good time. And the second one said, remember me in paradise. And the Lord said, I'll see you this afternoon.
Isn't that awesome?
Yeah.
And what's frustrating and painful to watch is, depending on what church they go to, who they sit in front of, what they're taught, they think that, it's grace plus performance, it's grace plus something more, and they don't know if they've measured up and done enough, and that's a simple message, and it's hard for us in a world where you perform, you get rewarded, you don't perform, you get punished. That's the world we live in. In that world, it's hard for us to get our minds around, remember me when you come into your paradise today, remember me. And Jesus said, he didn't say, well, wait a minute, you spent your whole life doing, he said, today you will be with me. That's incredible. That's a hard thing to get over for me.
Yeah. Well, and then also, you have to remember he was in pain. He was probably going to say anything. But he just said, remember me. He was going to endure his pain. So a lot of us say, I believe in God when I'm in pain. And I always talk about, after 9/11, all the churches were full. And after Christmas and New Year's, people were going, okay, we made it, and went back to where it was. They were in pain, so they were looking.
And you talk about pain and discomfort, and those are the people we see are the people that are hurting. And I, you pray that you want to see them through God's eyes. You want to. Those are human beings created in God's image that He passionately cares for and has pursued throughout their lives, and you want your heart, even though it hurts, you want your heart to break for those people.
Yeah,
that's kind of the goal and the role of what we do.
Yeah, Kermit, you had mentioned it is kind of hard to watch somebody pass who was suffering spiritually and wouldn't relinquish, wouldn't surrender, wouldn't give in, to what's going on. And I think sometimes, can you tell if somebody is, I would say, spiritually fit, but if they are looking for the next life, is there an easy death, if I can call it that, or a rough one? Or
Well, death, as we live different lives, the three of us have different priorities and different approaches to things. And with death, you see a number of different approaches. The person that's just labored in their breathing and wrenching in pain, and even though they're being medicated, it just seems like they can't even relax and let the medication work sometimes. And that's very disconcerting. For me, as I've watched people in end-of-life situations, it's just at some point just putting a hand on their shoulder and just comforting them, reminding them that this is just a transition in life. Sometimes I compare it to like when we were in the mother's womb, and we come out of the mother's womb and we get into the physical realm. We learn to live as physical human beings. In our mother's womb, we had an ideal environment, but now we've got problems and issues, but we learn to talk with people and relate to people. And I haven't met anyone that says, I want to go back to the constraints of my mother's womb, even with the issues. And so then, as we transfer from life in the flesh to life in the kingdom of God, they're going to move into a perfect environment. Your loved one is going to be experiencing spiritual freedom. They're probably not going to want to come back as much as they love you. And this sometimes offers a sense of peace because they never thought about life continuing, even though they believe in heaven, that from God's perspective, it's life in the womb, life in the flesh, life in the kingdom for those in Christ.
And when the baby was moving from the womb to life, outside world, they were scared.
Yeah, it was.
We're scared.
Yes.
And you folks address the spiritual fear.
Yes.
Yeah, and certainly it seems, generally speaking, the younger the person is, the more afraid they are, at least initially, in my experience. A 50-something, it's a little harder to get their mind around the end of their life, which I can say I understand. Someone who's 80-some years old, generally speaking, I think at least intellectually. They understand, I've had a good long, how much longer could it last?
Yes.
And they're a little more accepting of, okay, my life's coming to an end, and it's really hard with the younger ones, with the 40-somethings, the 50-somethings, and we do deal with, I believe you've had some children at times, so I've not had to do that, but so that's a part of it too. And then, I know in spiritual circles they use the term dying grace, that it seems that God gives us. Very few of my patients are afraid, at least as it progresses. Now, maybe initially, and there's some that they're diagnosed and a month later, they're on hospice and they're close to the end, and it's kind of hard for the families, hard for the patient to get their mind around. It's like their head's spinning, but it impresses me how few are really afraid when it gets to that point.
Correct.
It's interesting, speaking on a spiritual plane, one of our male nurses had noticed at the Pickering House years ago, he said when, people die, they pass at the Pickering House. Or a good percentage of our people in service do not die at the Pickering House. But the ones that do, it's just, nothing is unusual outside, but when somebody younger will say a man went in for gallbladder, and they found pancreatic cancer stage 4, and he has like 5-6 weeks. It's like a car accident. All of a sudden it hits.
Yes.
When they come in here, because the family is in an uproar, completely caught everybody off guard. He said when somebody younger in their 30s generally is passing, deer, almost a herd of deer, he said 10 or 12 of them will gather at that window, not just out in the yard of the Pickering House. At that window, they can sense something's going on. And Chester, he works part-time doing that as well.
Yes, he does.
Our cat. He can sense something's going on.
Yes.
And one of the cool pictures I saw a painting one time, and the man's in the bed, he had just passed, and his wife and child are crying, and then over here you can see that penciled in, his grandparents, his mom and dad, his brothers and sisters are open arms. You can see them, they're just thinned in, and so he just went from here to there. Some are sad, some are happy.
Yes.
So that was a very interesting concept. And as far as being a chaplain, Colonel, were you a minister at one time, pastor?
Yes, I spent about 30 years in pastoral ministry, working in youth and children's ministries for a long time.
He doesn't look that old.
And I spent my first 15 years of my career was in the YMCA as a fitness specialist, and then I went into the ministry for about 30 years, and now I've been here in chaplaincy for about 7 or 8 years. It just opened up. I was at my last church for about 20 years, and at my age, starting in another church ministry just didn't seem appropriate, and so this opened up through a mutual friend of my wife's, that her mother was on hospice here, and she knew that they needed a chaplain. She told my wife, and I applied, and you guys accepted me, so I've been here now, and I enjoy my ministry here very much with Fairhope, because they give us the opportunity, the freedom to share the gospel as the opportunities arise. And in terms of each year, I think Mark's experience and mine, or we would probably see somewhere between 10, 12, and 15 annually that recommit their lives or make a commitment to Christ. And that's without force feeding it. That's by showing the family love, respect, and honor at a situation like that. And they respond because they're at a loss emotionally, sometimes almost as bad as a wreck, and they see us being able to comfort them, give them peace, then they're receptive to the message of Christ's peace coming into their life.
Yeah, Mark, I think it is nice, and we had talked about earlier, you're not preaching, you're showing by example, and that sells itself. Were you, if I can ask, I don't know, were you ever a pastor, or?
I was at Faith Memorial Church for a few years in the early 2000s, and then I was the associate pastor at Pleasant Chapel Church of God out on 37. which is where I was when this opportunity came along. Linda Ward talked to me. You guys do a program. Do you still do it at the radio station?
Yeah, Scripture
90.9?
Solutions, WSCO.
There you go. Yeah, got to promote it. But anyway, and she asked me at some point they needed a contingent, and it was just funny. Over a few months, it grew from that into a full-time position. So that's kind of, it came from the Christian radio station and Pleasant Chapel Church of God.
I kind of like what Kermit said in that it isn't necessarily Sunday morning. You two have to live your faith, which we all should. But I mean, you really get to minister to people year-round, nonstop. Do you ever do anything pastor-ish, minister-ish, like weddings, funerals?
Weddings, not very often, but occasionally. Other than that, we counsel probably. I counsel people that it isn't part of my job here. Do that some, not a ton, but the vast majority, ministry-wise, for me is what I do here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Kermit, do you do?
Weddings, I've done several here at the Pickering House where a couple is engaged and grandpa or grandma is a patient in their end of life, and they want the grandparents to be present. So we've done some spur of the moment types of weddings. They've still gone ahead and then had their official wedding at a later date.
Oh, okay.
But we've signed the paperwork and they've gotten married just so grandpa or grandma would be able to be there and enjoy the occasion. I don't do too many weddings outside of that type of wedding. I've done maybe 4 or 5 of them in my tenure here as a chaplain. As far as funerals are concerned, we do a number of funerals, a number of our patients. I mentioned we have a number of people that are very solid Christians but don't have an active church home. The chaplain comes in at a time. We support the family, and they've asked us on numerous occasions, would you be willing to honor our loved one through a memorial or funeral service?
Yeah, that's interesting. I just kind of figured, since at the end of life, all the oopses kind of come to, oops, we wanted to do this or that. And as far as weddings, we had one before either one of you folks were here. He was being dismissed or discharged from a hospital in Columbus, and his fiancée was coming down with him. And the social worker said, "Oh, you engaged?" She goes, "Yeah, like 15 years." And he said he just not in a hurry to commit. You don't want to rush into something like that. And so on the way down, we started making some phone calls, and by the time we got to the Pickering House, our chaplain was at in fact, that wasn't the Pickering House, then it was where he was going in a nursing home, I guess. But anyway, the whole service was all lined up at that time. So from 15 years of engagement to bam, they got married. But
same thing happened at the Pickering House just several months ago. Carl Hartman performed a ceremony for the patient and her fiance. They turned the room into a honeymoon suite, decorated it all up. It was awesome. So.
Yeah, if you see it knocking, don't come, the door.
I don't think they put that up.
Okay. Well, we know how to have fun.
Stop overthinking it. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to have to, I guess, kind of cut this short. I appreciate having both of you on. It is interesting and enlightening, to learn that, for one thing, they're not required to have a chaplain. Did we discuss that?
Very true. We did not, but that is some decline. I think Kermit might have mentioned certain beliefs, atheists, and it is. It's about what they need, what they want. If they want us, that's great. We don't get our feelings hurt. And it's funny how patients and families seem to worry about that. And you always have to remind them it's about you, it's about your care. And I would say regularly people, either they have a ton of spiritual support and they don't need us, they have no belief system and they don't need us.
And even the families, if not the person on service, the families can sometimes use the support.
Yes.
Well, I would like to thank Kermit Welty, Spiritual Care Coordinator with Fairhope Hospice Palliative Care, and Mark Lynn, Spiritual Coordinator, and I'll say Home of the Pickering House. I'll get our whole tagline in there.
That's important.
Yep, he's with the Pickering House here. And remember, celebrate life.
Interface Video presents Fairfield Today. Brought to you by Fairfield Federal Savings and Loan, Fairfield Medical Center, Fairhope Hospice and Palliative Care, the Fairfield County Board of Developmental Disabilities, and the Frankie Smith Funeral Home.